Hello, my name is David Madden from Thales, and I'm here today to talk about securing containers and DevOps. And we're glad to have Cameron Skidmore, Associate Solutions Architect at Red Hat, with us, who's an industry expert in containers and open source, to help us understand the critical and emerging market. Microservices and containerized architectures are being embraced as a critical element of enterprise digital transformation, as a container platform offers developers teams an efficient way to build and deploy apps across hybrid cloud environments, really at scale. However, what is missing typically is the security element, and Red Hat and Thales can help ensure code runs securely and data can be protected effectively. So today, as a result of all of this, we're going to talk a little bit more about how Red Hat and Thales can enable a secure and scalable DevOps platform to deploy services. So with that, let's get started with a short history and background on DevOps and containerization. Cameron, can you share a few details with us so we can better understand?
Sure, Dave. I'd love to. So this idea of DevOps, I think it really came out of a need to solve a problem. And that problem was that code just wasn't getting built and even deployed quick enough. And that there was this massive inefficiency in the process. For me, the best way I know how to kind of describe this within a metaphor is it's like a relay race, right? With batons. And you've got one runner running up to hand it off to the next runner. But of course, the other runner starts running before they get there. So both are kind of working together in that moment. And there's not this hard stop where the person has to, from nothing, start with the baton again. And I think it's a similar kind of idea with DevOps, because you want there not to be this hard demarcation point where the dev team then has to throw code over to the ops team, and it just kind of creates this massive amount of inefficiency in the process.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that, this is something people have been working on for a while. DevOps isn't really a new idea at this point, but there's a lot of, let's say, technological innovation going on right now, right? There's a whole lot of stuff in the field of automation, in cloud technology. And I think you and I have talked about this before, but DevOps is really a function of the cultural adoption of DevOps, but then you got to combine that with all this technology. And the primary technology being adopted to drive that is really the automation. And that's kind of what, add those two together and you're going to end up getting the amount of success that your teams are looking for in DevOps.
Makes sense. So how are modern organizations then leveraging open source, DevOps, and containers as a core part of these digital transformation plans?
Sure, that's a great question. And when you're talking about the digital transformation, or you're talking about things like IoT or cloud, fundamentally, more and more, what I think that ends up being is a conversation around container technology, right? Because all of these are kind of converging within that. And the container technology is different than legacy infrastructure because, and we were talking about this before, but it was built with DevOps already in mind, right? And you can see that in how they put together these solutions and these technologies. It's not where you're having to, shoehorn the teams to work together in ways that the environment was never designed to. It's more about from jump, you can see, the devs teams are flowing really well into the ops team. And it's just kind of a natural progression from that. And so at Red Hat, we talk about the digital transformation a lot, and DevOps is really key to digital transformation because fundamentally with digital transformation, that's something where the company itself, right, is trying to reinvent their processes, their business processes, and they're trying to put technological innovation first and foremost. And I think at first when people hear digital transformation, they may think, okay, we're going to transform digitally. We're going to move into the cloud space. We're going to adopt all this technology. But it's not just one big sprint. It's more of a marathon, right? You're going to have to constantly innovate. You're going to have to constantly get your developers what they need and keep the pace up over the next year and decade even. And there's going to be a huge advantage for companies that are able to do that and leverage this kind of technology.
Makes sense. And so it sounds like, development, IT, operations, they're going, from a service provider approach to almost a core part of the whole digital value creation process. So this is really now a core asset of any business in a digital economy. Would you agree, Cameron?
I certainly would agree. And I think that also a big aspect of maybe the perceived risk going into this new paradigm, especially with all this new technology, is that there's this hesitation on the part of, well, maybe I don't really, know everything about Kubernetes, or I don't know everything about how security works in Kubernetes. And that's what we found in our research, is that a big blocker for this digital transformation is mainly those two things, which is why I think it's really important for companies like Thales and Red Hat to work together, because helping meet people where their IT skills are, and implementing top tier enterprise ready security on top of it, I think that we can really lower the barrier to entry for digital transformation together.
Makes sense. So in terms of security, it's like a platform almost, and then leveraging Red Hat really drives things as a platform where you can take these elements and apply them across your organization, if you will. So it enables things. Obviously, if it's not there, you've got a considerable risk from both your platform running smoothly, efficiently, as well as making sure things you're not missing an element as you roll from development to production. So how would you architect this with Red Hat OpenShift, and how do you implement it across containers? Can you describe that in a little more detail for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I can give a quick flyby of the architecture behind OpenShift. So as it always does, it really starts with the OS here. And our goal with the OS that all this is going to be running on is to give you the ability to draw from any kind of platform, right? If it's your own personal data center, if it's a cloud environment, we want it to feel all like it's cut from the same piece of cloth, right? Because that's going to also help this cooperation in DevOps without everybody having to work with different types of starting points. And CoreOS is how we've been able to do that. And CoreOS, for the points of security here, it's a very special operating system because, for one, it can scale, of course, but for two, it's designed with the smallest amount of surface area for attack possible. And once it's built, it can't really be altered. So it's inalterable as an OS, makes it very secure from a security point of view. The really quick main point that I also want to make is that Kubernetes is OpenShift. I think sometimes people hear OpenShift and they're like OpenShift versus Kubernetes, but really OpenShift is built on top of Kubernetes, right? And that's really the reason behind it. We just have a lot of other things to, again, going back to what we were saying before, perceived lack of talent on the part of certain companies wanting to adopt this technology. That's why we build OpenShift, right? We make it easier to install wherever you want to install it. We make it easy, whether it's in a cloud or an on-premise environment. Auto scaling is determined through the actual OpenShift GUI, so it's a lot simpler and a lot more approachable. And we even have one-click updates as well, so you're not constantly tasking your administrators with kind of overhead that might come with administering a Kubernetes vanilla environment all by themselves. And so that's another big part of it. We also have services that exist, like code-ready workspaces and Istio service mesh and all these other things to kind of help round out the sharper edges of Kubernetes environment that you might have just on its own. I think that's an important point as well. We kind of lay that out here in the top section with the application services and stuff. But yeah,
so Kubernetes effectively deployable in the enterprise by providing all these Red Hat value adds beyond just the core OS.
Absolutely, and that's really why people have kind of gravitated toward OpenShift, and we've been working on this offering in parallel with Kubernetes for 5 years now. We've been an active participant in the Kubernetes upstream. Kubernetes is, of course, open source. You can't think Red Hat without thinking open source. So we've been on this for a jump, and we've really been trying to make it as approachable, as easy, as safe and secure as possible. Just taking an open source project off the shelf, there's a whole lot of worry that can happen with that as far as it being enterprise and hardened and secure behind it. So we do offer, of course, things like continuous security patches as well, which is kind of standard for any of the open source enterprise offerings at this point.
Brilliant. And, one thing I heard the other day I thought was interesting from our friends at IDC, that they found that teams that were leveraging OpenShift and your OpenShift container platform were, and using application delivery and DevOps, were in much better position to use software innovation agility to impact organizations in their response to the crisis, as they were able to roll out these new releases in a much shorter time and help drive the shift to their digital business from physical businesses. And I thought that was a really interesting thing. And what you're giving them here is the tools to enable them to do that. As you say, people don't necessarily have all the skills and capability. In that previous slide, that was the number one issue, along with security and making sure people can move to a digital world. And you're just helping them, giving them that roadmap, if you will, and all the tools to get there quickly and efficiently.
Absolutely. We want to make people feel safe to move quickly, I think would be the best way to describe OpenShift. We want you to be able to innovate quickly, to answer whatever comes your way, like, for example, the pandemic, which I love hearing that. It really makes me proud to work at Red Hat with examples like that. But that's the key. You want to be able to feel like you're not, sticking your neck out every time you really sprint forward in your own digital innovation and creating these new digital assets. So yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So I guess to your point, these are, digital crown jewels, if you will, as you're changing your whole business and putting it online. So how are we going to approach security together with Red Hat, and how can we help customers prepare as they build their, containerized environments?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've spoken already about DevOps, but it's something that we've been working on lately, especially with Thales as well, as this idea of DevSecOps. And so the question becomes, we've broken the silos down over the last decade, especially with the automation technology of developers and ops people. But where does security fit in that message? And so in order to kind of answer that, we've been developing out DevSecOps as kind of a philosophy, but also something to hang the technology on. And it's a framework that focuses, again, on what's most important, on speed of innovation, but making sure that speed of innovation is working in step with the security team and not just, stepping on each other's toes, as it were.
Right. Because we've seen that. You're right, Cameron, where, dev develops something, then they try and get it to operations, but security pops in at the last second and says, wait a minute, you got to go back to square one, if you will, because the code isn't secure. And of course, then they have to redo it. Whereas, as you say, if it's all part of that DevOps process, as you say, DevSecOps, it flows together, and you don't have those hiccups in the last yard. Right.
Absolutely. And I was just on a call earlier today, Dave, and we were talking about security. And we made the point: Red Hat really isn't a security vendor. We're not trying to be. We're trying to be the platform and the tools and the infrastructure to build out whatever you need. But we really do need the partner ecosystem with partners like Thales, who can step in and fill out the parts of this DevSecOps pipeline here to really bring it to the next level of security and make it ready for the enterprise. I think a big question that a lot of people have, and before that chart about hesitancy to digital transformation, security was one of them. I think people feel really safe in their legacy environments because they know how to get the compliances they want. Right. And how to do that. And when this new kind of paradigm with cloud native and Kubernetes, they're like, well, I don't really know, is this going to get me there? Is it not? I think that's what Thales can really bring to the table. Do you want to talk any about how Thales is helping fill out the security points along this DevSecOps flow?
Yeah, that would be great, actually. And to your point, we've seen that time and again where somebody's ready to roll something out, and they go, wait a minute, I'm not putting my crown jewels online. How are we going to make sure this is going to still be compliant? Are we going to meet GDPR? All these standards, PCI, and as you know, that's what we've been doing for the past 20 years. And so, as you say, we're a partner focused on security. We've done it in the old world. Together with Red Hat, we're helping to move to a digitally transformed modern world. And really, what Thales does when you look at this is we provide a couple of core elements that integrate through your open APIs and open source from Red Hat and OpenShift and your container platform, where we sign the containers, make sure that they're the ones that they're supposed to be, that they haven't been, tampered along the way or over time. You prove that they're from your enterprise entity. And we've got the processes to do that in a secure manner. We also help with managing keys, protecting sensitive data, credit cards, personal information, or even just private data that you want to make sure that stays private, even if it's being stored up in the cloud or in a hybrid cloud environment. So as you look through this process that Cameron has here, in the flow, our goal is just to tie into that whole platform that Red Hat is offering with OpenShift and your automation to make sure that you can not only automate, you can automate at scale. Because now with these secure hardware roots of trust, storing keys, protecting them, it enables you to scale your DevOps in a way that it gets rid of the manual interrupts to make sure, can I sign this code? Who can sign it? If this has already been configured in advance, it all flows smoothly, around the world and really protects against fraudulent keys and usage. So our goal is really to help work with Red Hat to enable our enterprise customers together to scale their existing assets to the cloud, modernize them, and then move them to a microservice and containerized environments. And we really appreciate the partnership. We've got thousands of enterprise customers that are doing this. And really our goal is just to hopefully make their lives a little easier and a little more secure as they take this migration to the cloud and digital transformation.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you want to add, Cameron, that I might have missed?
I think I'm good. To kind of hammer home this ecosystem, and that, this isn't there's no silver bullet when it comes to answering these questions of DevSecOps and digital transformation. It's best practices, right? To have secrets management handled by a third party like Thales. So I think it's a strong message to have to present all this together in united front and help people feel confident to take that next step toward digital transformation.
Great. Well, Cameron, I got to say, on behalf of all of us here at Thales and our customers listening today, thank you very much for coming on as our expert from Red Hat to explain containers, DevOps, DevSecOps in a little more detail with us. And, if people have more questions, I'm sure they do, because this is really just a high level to give people a sense of where the world's going, what our customers are doing together. We've got a bunch of materials that you can review in more detail and reach out to our organization. So, we hope everybody's staying safe out there and building secure environments and changing the world in the process.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure to be here. It's always fun talking shop with you guys.
Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe.